Disclaimer time. I know some kids watch my videos. I can't stop you from watching my videos, but today's topic requires context. You should talk to your parents about this if you are a kid. Disclaimer done. My name is Hutch and I make videos and put them on the internet, and if you've made it through the disclaimer, then you're choosing to be here right now. So last night I was watching a movie, as I normally do, and I was browsing iTunes for things to rent, and I remembered just randomly this song that was in an American Gangster trailer with Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe from way back in the day. Turns out it was by Jay-Z. It's a song called Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City. It's a great song, but I thought of the song, and then I thought of the movie, so I decided to watch the movie. And the movie's all about this guy named Frank Lucas, who was a very famous Harlem heroin dealer. He made a name for himself, number one, by being black and getting as rich as he got, because at the time that wasn't very common. And number two, he actually smuggled in heroin using caskets of dead soldiers coming in from Vietnam. So this guy was not dumb. And it's a 2.5-hour movie all about how he rose to power in Harlem and what it is like, as much as you can depict in a film, to be a drug dealer in a position of basically power absolute. In any case, I'm not here to talk about the synopsis of the film. I'm talking about what I took away from the film. And as I was watching this movie, I couldn't help but think of something that I've already learned from personal experience again and again and again and again and again, which is you can't get rid of addiction. You can't. There's no way you're ever going to eliminate addiction entirely. It's always going to be here. In the United States, roughly 10% of our population is addicted to something. And I think those numbers can go down, but you're never going to get rid of addiction, and you're never going to get rid of supply and demand for drugs. And so it got me thinking about making a video discussing this. Well, as soon as I thought of the idea to talk about it in a video, I started hopping on Twitter, and I made a very blanket statement. I said, all drugs should be legal, agree or disagree, and why. And I think I also said, if a man doesn't have sovereignty over his own body and consciousness, then what does he have? And I got a lot of responses, and I had some really interesting conversations with a lot of you guys, and I screen capped some of these conversations. I hope you don't mind. I am not trying to disparage anyone, and I'm not trying to suggest that by default I think that everyone should take my argument over theirs. By virtue of the nature of an argument, I believe that my position is right, but that doesn't mean that I want to completely discredit them. That said, I do want to share some of these conversations. Right away, one of the first arguments that I saw was, if you make all drugs legal, then you make them readily available, and consumption will logically increase if that were the case. And this is kind of true, and it's kind of not true, because if you look at Portugal and the Netherlands drug policy, for example, so Portugal's drug policy is that, effective in 2001, they just completely decriminalized all drugs. Heroin, meth, MDMA, all of them. All drugs are decriminalized. That doesn't mean that they are legal. As far as I know, there's not a country in the world in which all drugs are legal. I don't even think there's a country in the world where cannabis is legal. I think that there are countries where it's decriminalized. And that's what happened in Portugal. So what they did was they shifted the emphasis from incarceration and punishment to treatment. That was their philosophy. So they diverted a lot of their funds. You could no longer serve jail time for simple possession if you had less than 10 days supply of whatever drug that you had at the time. But that doesn't mean that you weren't disciplined. They have administrative disciplinary action for that sort of law breaking, because you are technically breaking the law. But their administrative approach is more focused on treatment and prevention rather than incarceration and punishment. I mean, and again, statistics are kind of skewed. You're always working with a sample size, and when you're talking about drugs, it's really hard to gauge it because it's such a taboo subject, and not many people are open about it, even in a forum which maybe they're paid to give honest answers for this survey. A lot of people still won't. But as far as the studies that I looked up, and forgive me, I don't have sources, and that's a criminal offense for someone who's making any kind of argument, but I spent some time last night doing some research. I sat down for like an hour, and I just researched Portugal's drug law and the Netherlands drug policy. And yeah, I use Wikipedia. Wikipedia can be a credible source if you check the sources within the actual document itself. And I can leave you links to the Wikipedia pages so you guys can check the sources for yourselves. But I did go and actually check and see where this information was coming from. A lot of the studies were done by the government themselves. They had funded, there were government-funded studies on the efficacy of this drug treatment approach. And apparently it's working because lifetime prevalency is at like 20% in Portugal, whereas in the United States it's like 40%. And I could be mistaken on that one. That could have just been specifically about pot. But the point is that you might see a certain percentage of increase with drugs like cocaine and cannabis and MDMA. But the differences that you see are pretty marginal. And on top of that, drug-related crime and death went down, way down in Portugal. That was one of the reasons why they decided to decriminalize drugs in the first place, is because they were having an HIV problem. There was a lot of intravenous drug users in Portugal at the time, and HIV was spreading faster than it had before, and so they had to react to it. In the United States, if you can imagine a similar situation occurring, I'm sure there would be just a mass prohibition on every drug on the market. There'd be like nicotine, no more, tobacco, no more. And I believe that would be the American response to it. Even though I don't agree with it. Portugal's response was to decriminalize all drugs and focus their attention on treatment. And Netherlands actually did the same thing. If you look at the Dutch, they focus a lot of their taxpayers' money on treatment programs, which is controversial in itself because recovery from drug addiction is totally possible. And I've seen firsthand accounts of hundreds and hundreds of people that I know on a first-name basis get clean, stay clean, and live happy lives. I'm not saying that's not possible, but treatment right now it's not very effective. I mean, there's about 97% of people will relapse after 1 year. I mean, that's 3% of people stay clean when they try to get clean. So I'm not saying that addiction's not a bitch. And I'm not saying that it's not torturous and gut-wrenching to watch someone that you love go through something like that, because I've been through that too, and it's awful. I am certainly not making a case that drugs are good and that you should do them, and I hope that's not what you're taking out of this video. The topic of recovery and how addiction affects not only the addict themselves, but everyone around them is a topic that I'm by no means trying to skirt. I 100% acknowledge that, and I think what I'm trying to say is that I think it's more prudent to punish the behavior and not the substance. So if someone decides to drop LSD and go rob a 7-Eleven and shoot the clerk, acid absolutely had something to do with that probably in that moment, but it's better to focus on the behavior. So if someone killed someone, that's wrong. We punish that. And you punish it accordingly. If someone kills someone, they're fucking going to jail for a long time. So it's not like they're getting off scot-free. The fact that acid was involved was not incidental. It was definitely influential in this hypothetical situation, but it is more prudent to focus on the behavior itself, because what you're saying is if you are a governing body and you're telling someone you are not allowed to put this in your body, what you're telling them is we don't have faith that you have the correct judgment to determine what drugs are good and what drugs are bad. Caffeine, aspirin, ibuprofen, any number of other drugs that people take on a daily basis. Those are what some would consider to be good drugs, although you can make arguments against caffeine too. That's not the point of the video. The point of the video is to discuss the fact that I think people have a right to decide for themselves, and I think it is a government's job to make sure that its people are properly educated, and that's just not the case. Nixon administration, for example, appointed a team of credited researchers and scientists to study the effects of marijuana, because at the height of the anti-war movement, which Nixon fucking loathed to the nth degree, he thought everyone was, he was completely annoyed by the anti-war movement. A huge part of the anti-war movement was marijuana, and so he decided to single marijuana out. And so he appointed a team of scientists to study the drug and come back with the results. And so they did, and they came back and they said, it's kind of okay. You're not going to die from it, and if you do it in moderation, it's no more harmful than drinking. In fact, it's less harmful. Nixon administration just completely ignored the findings and proceeded to classify marijuana as a Schedule I drug, above cocaine at the time. I think it still is. I think it's still considered a more lethal and harmful and potentially dangerous drug than cocaine. And sure, you could make the arguments that cartels in Mexico are dangerous, and they certainly are. I'm sure we've all seen at least pictures or maybe videos of some of the beheadings that go on down there. But what's the quickest way that you bankrupt a cartel? Legalize the drug. The street market of the drug crashes down, and the violence will quickly dissipate. I mean, there will be a transitionary period. I'm sure cartels won't like what's happening and will try to stop it, but this is a war we're talking about here, not a war on drugs. This is a war on oppression, and drug cartels oppress, and I'm certainly not in favor of cartels. And I feel like I'm ranting, but I don't mind that this is a long video, and I hope you guys don't mind either. And stick with me just for one more second, because I have one more point that I want to hit on, which is the fact that a lot of the responses that I got for the statement on Twitter was that we'll think of the kids. If you make drugs readily available to children, then they will surely use them in mass quantities, and that will be that. That's actually not true. In Netherlands and Portugal, drug usage across the board, soft drugs and hard drugs, went down for youth. And problem drug users amongst the youth went down even further. And all drugs are not legal, but completely available to anyone who wants to buy them, really. I don't think it would be too hard to get heroin if you're in 6th grade. The fact remains, just because something is legal or available doesn't mean that people are going to want to do it. I don't think people are going to wake up one day if drugs are legal. I don't think you're going to go to Safeway and see heroin next to candy in the checkout aisle. I don't think that would happen, and I'm certainly not in favor of that happening. I don't think regulation should be in place. Sure, I'm okay with drinking age. I'm not okay with our drinking age, but I'm okay with there being a law saying, as a community, we don't want you youngins doing that just yet, and we'll fucking punish you if you do. I'm okay with that. I don't think that you kids that are watching this, and I know that there are some of you that are kids, and I know that there are some of you that are my age and much, much older. It's a wide, expansive crowd. But I know that I know that I'd like to think that I have faith that if heroin was legal tomorrow, that every 6th grader in the country wouldn't just go, woohoo, heroin! Like, I just don't see that happening. And I don't see adults doing that either. How many suburban families are you going to think, one guy's going to wake up and say to his wife, well, I got to go to Jiffy Lube, got to go to Whole Foods and get that cabbage that you like so much. I think I'm going to try heroin today because it's legal. Bucket list, I know, right? But I just want to get it off the list. And what do you think his wife's going to say? Yeah, good for you. Go for it. I don't think that's going to happen. And that didn't happen in Portugal. In fact, if the claims that legalizing drugs or making drugs readily available causes complete chaos and anarchy, if that claim is true, then why the fuck are all these happy people in Portugal right now? These are screen-grabbed images from vlogs in Portugal. I do not see fires in the streets. I do not see crazy, crack-addicted, fucking huge, yoked-out dudes stealing shit on every corner. I don't see that happening. I see a normal culture. I see a happy, there's probably happy and sad people. The point I'm trying to make is that I don't think that the sky is falling approach to drugs is working. I don't think and certainly the studies show that they aren't working. Drug usage actually went up for kids that went through the DARE program. Nice job, Reagan. Really pat yourself on the back for that. We have never, ever, ever found a way to combat supply and demand, ever. And we've spent billions and billions and billions of dollars over the last 20 years on this completely deceptive and misleading war on drugs that originally started off as a political campaign. That was the backbone of a political campaign, and the entire country was warped into a fervor, and pretty soon everybody was afraid that their child was going to become a crack-addicted prostitute by the time they were 12. And this is coming from someone who, I have no interest in trying heroin, I have no interest in trying methamphetamines, I have no interest in trying many other drugs. I have zero interest in doing that, and I don't think that's going to change tomorrow if they were decriminalized or legalized. So I guess the debate turns to, do you decriminalize or do you legalize? And I think that's a hard one. I think pragmatically I would probably say decriminalize, but I think because I think that would be easier for a country transitioning from prohibition to not prohibition. I think decriminalization would probably soften that transition. But in the long run, I don't think that decriminalization should be the goal. I think that the goal should be people should be able to do whatever they want with their bodies, including destroy themselves if that's what they want to do. And that sucks when it happens. But you can't stop it. Like the wind blows. If an addict wants to get high, they're gonna get high, and it doesn't matter how many laws you pass. This is not a video about morality. This is a video about goal-directed governing and what is the best way to decide collectively as a people how to deal with something like drugs. And I think that you have things like meth epidemics. You can call them epidemics, sure. I think you have things like meth epidemics or MDMA epidemics or cocaine epidemics that do pop up in schools and communities from time to time and just completely ravage the community. I'm not discounting that, not discrediting that at all, but I think it's up to that community to decide how they want to deal with that problem. It's not up to guys that live 3,000 miles away to decide what a community should do about something as personally devastating and affecting as a drug epidemic. And I think that's it. I just felt like ranting about this, and I think I've ranted long enough. Again, I'm going to add this disclaimer at the end. You fucking kids that are watching this right now, watching a video that my parents never would have let me fucking watch. This is not me co-signing on you going out and experimenting. Not even a little bit. So do not fucking get it twisted. We're good? We're good? Everybody else? Good talk. I'm gonna go.